morning, everyone. I'm State Representative Jane Garibay, and you are here on the porch. We welcome today two of my favorite people, our town clerks, which after working with them these past elections, I wanted the public to know a little bit about what they do. We have Anna Posniak, who's the town clerk in Windsor. Hi, Anna.
Hello, thank you for inviting me, Representative Garibay.
And we have Scott Nolan, who's Windsor Locks.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yeah. So I know a little bit of what you all went through during this. Anna, not only are you the Windsor Town Clerk, but you were or still are statewide chair of the Town Clerks Association. Am I correct?
That's correct, although my term as president ended this past April. So during COVID, I was the president for the Connecticut Town Clerks Association.
And we're lucky that we had you with your wisdom. And Scott, you're newer, but you worked under Bill Hamill, who was a longtime town clerk, who helped, you learned a lot from him. I mean, how many years was he there?
Yeah, so I had the privilege of working under Bill Hamill. Bill Hamill was town clerk for the town of Windsor Locks for 29 years.
Wow.
So he's been town clerk since roughly 1992. When I was hired as the assistant town clerk in 2019, I had the experience of training under him and taking all of that wonderful knowledge that he had in his head and just trying to absorb as much of it as I could. And then in August of 2020, Bill chose to retire after a very long career, very successful career. So the Board of Selectmen then appointed me town clerk.
That is awesome, and we congratulate you on that and the wonderful job that you both did in both towns. Not only was it trying during COVID, it was the changes in how people voted. And even though I personally feel it opened it to more people, there were also a lot of challenges with that. And what does a town clerk do? I mean, I can go there and get my birth certificate. I get my dog license, different things. But can you explain a little bit more?
Absolutely. So the town clerks have a very varied functions. Probably one of our biggest functions is recording land records. So that's your deeds, your mortgages, your release of mortgages. All of those are recorded in our office, and we work with title searches and attorneys every day to assist our residents with their property and obtaining mortgages and having title searches done. We also handle all of the vital records. So that's your birth, your death records, your marriage records, issuing burial permits, cremation permits. We work with funeral directors every single day. And during COVID, it was a very tough time, not only for the funeral directors and the families, but town clerks throughout the entire state worked tirelessly to make sure that burial permits and cremation permits were available and that certified copies of death certificates were available to the family so that they could proceed with, obtaining funds through the estate for life insurance and things of that nature. We handle the dog licenses, sports licenses, so that's your hunting and your fishing licenses. We handle the freedom of information for the town, and that's recording all of the agendas and minutes for all the boards and commissions. And we are a resource for our residents and any customer regarding requesting public information from the town. It's very important that government is transparent, and those requests usually come through our office. We handle notarizations, we issue marriage licenses. We handle the elections with the registrars. We work collectively with them. So when the registrars are not in the office, we assist them with registering new voters in town. And in addition, we issue absentee ballots for all of the elections. And as town clerk, we handle all the town meetings, meaning the special town meetings when you need to request additional funds in addition to what your budget was passed for the previous year. We are usually the face for most of our residents when they don't know where to start. And we're glad to always work with our residents to direct them to the correct department. Sometimes it's just knowing the correct terminology so that when they reach out to either a town department or maybe it's a state agency so that they can get the assistance that they're really looking for. We're just a general resource for our residents.
Right. I do know that if I go into town hall at either place, you are the go-to people that if I have a question to ask. Scott, did Windsor Locks town clerk's office close down totally at any time during COVID?
So we were in the office every day. We were restricting some public access as far as having we were doing things from our lobby, doing things remotely, doing some online remote notarization. So we were still fully functional. You know, as folks needed to do title work or come in to do a title search, we would, you know, have them make an appointment. You know, while taking all the appropriate precautions. I mean, you know, through COVID-19, you know, we did everything we could here in Windsor Locks to keep the town and, you know, the clerk's office specifically, you know, running at full capacity. You know, so it was masking up and, you know, wiping things down, which was especially true to the November election. So no, we were never, you know, closed. We were here every day doing whatever we could to assist the residents. So.
Right. And that was true for Windsor also, wasn't it, Anna?
That's correct. Even though our town hall was closed to the public through June 8th of 2020, my office was simply a policy. You called us and told us you were at the front door and we went out and assisted you. We have all of our land records available online. So all of the title searchers and attorneys were able to continue doing the work that they needed for their clients. And we were also accepting e-recordings, which means that land records could be sent to us through vetted vendors who would send us the documents for recording.
Right. And by the way, that was phenomenal how you could remember everything a town clerk does. I know you do it every day, so for you that's easy. But as I'm listening to it, oh, I didn't know that one. I didn't know that one. And I knew you, both offices were frontline workers essentially because that kind of business, especially death records and all that that was happening, you needed to be there for the public. So what qualifications do you need? I mean, I look at you and I know you both, and you're people, you like people, you know, you're out there, but you're also you have to be very detailed. I don't think I could do your jobs because you can't make a mistake. You have to be very accurate and be able to look. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I would definitely say being very detailed oriented. You know, so before this, I actually had a career in higher education. I used to work down at Eastern Connecticut State University as the assistant to director of residence life. But government was always a passion of mine. Being involved in the town of Windsor Locks was always a passion of mine. So I really started to get involved with, you know, town government in 2015, where I started to learn how a municipality operates. You know, because you know, being able to know if I don't have the answer, being able to know where to find the answer or a direction to point you in was critical. You know, but then paying attention to some of those fine details is really important as you're recording, you know, the record for a town meeting to make sure you capture everything correctly. You know, especially something like that, that's a record that's going to last 100 years. You know, you never know when you have to go back into the archives to see what the town clerk noted or wrote down. So, you know, attention to detail is critical. Knowing who, you know, which resources that you're going to need is important. You know, and personally for myself, being a new town clerk, you know, one of the things I really took an initiative on is to network and to be able to develop relationships with surrounding clerks. So if I didn't have the answer to something, I knew I could pick up the phone and call one of my neighboring clerks.
That's very important because some people don't, they take a job and they're afraid to ask
Yeah,
predecessor or
So-
somebody else what to do. So
So I've been very fortunate in that regards that I've had, you know, the town of East Granby, Suffield, and of course Windsor. I can always call. I know I can always call, and I always get the answer that I'm looking for. So.
And
you
it's
know, that's so
important to point out that town clerks are required by state statute to be certified. And the certification process takes 2.5 years. And then after we attend those classes through 2.5 years, we do have to take a test that is proctored by some town clerks and the Secretary of the State's office. It's a 100-question test. And if you pass the test, then you receive your certification from the Secretary of the State.
Yeah. So, and I'm actually, so personally, I've taken several of the courses. So I am on track to sit for certification. But just being appointed as town clerk since 2020, I'm not yet qualified yet for it.
you're not you're qualified, you're not certified. There's a
Correct.
difference.
So you actually have to get enough credits before you can sit and take the test.
Yes.
But I'm on track to do so.
Absolutely. And I think your learning experience sometimes is crucial also, as much as the test and that knowledge is crucial. It's what you're learning, which will help make that test a lot easier for you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. You know, voting is a big thing. What were some of the challenges that you faced this past election, without getting too much into the weeds, but so that people can understand? Um, uh, Mail-in voting was huge, I think.
Yeah, that was probably the hardest, most difficult part for us. We were working with the state voter registry system, which is an antiquated system that was built on allowing for 1% of the of people to cast absentee ballots. In this past election, there were 665,000 absentee ballots, which equates to 34% of the voters choosing to use an absentee ballot. So the CTCA worked collectively with the Secretary of the State's office to establish a new way to manage this system so that we could process absentee ballots quickly, and to ensure that the ballots were delivered to the voter, to give them enough time to vote and then allow for the voter to get the ballots back to us. We worked with them to request the drop boxes that you now see at all the town halls, because we knew that the mail system was plagued with many, deliveries.
Their own
Because during
challenges.
COVID, everybody was,
Right.
requesting, buying everything online. So the post office was stressed just as much as our office was. So those drop boxes were crucial during that time period. And the Secretary of the State sending out the absentee ballots for us was very important, because the number of phone calls that we would have received from residents requesting a ballot would have been difficult to keep up with. So for them to get that application at home, and the Secretary of the State's office did an excellent job as well with social media and TV campaigns to let people know how they could successfully vote the ballot. We typically saw a 5 to 7% rejection rate in years past, but that campaign really brought it down to less than 1%, because there are steps involved to that voters must do, like signing the inner ballot. And if they didn't do that, their ballot could be rejected. And returning the ballots on time was another one that we saw was a great rejection rate. So all of these things really assisted us with being able to assist our voters with voting successfully. And another huge thing, I think, Scott, you probably experienced the same thing, was that our phones were ringing off the hook. People were watching the news, they were getting inundated with messages on social media, and they were just confused with all of the misinformation. We were a valuable resource for our residents to let them know what information was correct and what wasn't incorrect. And some of the information was correct, but maybe it pertained to Georgia or to California, and it didn't pertain to Connecticut. So it was important for us to be that resource for our residents, to know that their vote was going to be secure and it was going to be counted at this presidential election.
Which we tried to assure, because in my district, both Windsor and Windsor Locks, we have a substantial elderly population who did not want to go in person and be subjected to the virus. With that, so it was great that it was mailed to them. They went to the drop box, they could drive in their car, put it in. I know for Scott, I think you were alone during part of that pandemic. It was before you hired your assistant town clerk, am I correct?
I was. So don't forget. So I had just been appointed town clerk, and we had the August 11th presidential primary. So I was alone for that, and then of course, so I had the opportunity to bring an attempt for the November 2020 election. But I have to say, I am extremely proud of the efforts that were put into the past election here in Windsor Locks. In a presidential election, we normally do maybe 200 to 300 absentee ballots. This past November 2020, the town of Windsor Locks did nearly 2,500.
Wow.
And I just, we were doing things here in town that hadn't really been done before the way we're doing them. I mean, the new database system that the Secretary of State's office had rolled out, the Connecticut voter registration system, was vital. It was crucial in achieving this goal. And it really did streamline the process. But in the beginning of this, we weren't set up for it. I mean, we didn't have the cable lines run because it has to be secure. It has to be on a secure modem, so the technology wasn't really there yet. We didn't have the scanners set up for the issuing the absentee ballots. We didn't have the label printers. So it was a series of things. But through different resources, the Secretary of State's office was phenomenal in ensuring that we had what we needed, especially with supplies or, one of the big things too that was helpful was financially. We needed to apply to get some money, some resources behind some of these efforts. So the Secretary of State's office worked with us to help find grant money.
That is awesome. And it's like you always want to prepare for the future, but who could have prepared from the biggest pandemic on record that we've seen, right?
Yeah.
I know with our Department of Labor and unemployment using COBOL system, which was from the 1970s, where no one even knew how to do it. It's so antiquated. It's like something back in history.
Yeah.
So,
But I think too, I think especially for me being a new clerk, but I think a lot of clerks out there would say that I think we learned a lot, after this past election, as far as, what the future of, elections would look like. I mean, the November 2020 election changed, how we, issue absentee ballots. So, for our upcoming election on November 2nd for the municipal, I mean, we're off and running already with absentee ballots. We're already issuing, we're knowledgeable now about the Connecticut voter registration system software, so we're able to start, implementing these changes today.
right. Go ahead, Anna.
I was just going to say, COVID, brought about the no excuse absentee ballot. It was necessary to have that. But COVID also gave us the opportunity, the right environment to be able to do the no excuse absentee ballots. In any other year, I don't know that we would have been able to pull that off, because one of the biggest things was space was needed. In Windsor, we issued 7,300 absentee ballots. We needed a place to store those ballots. When our town hall is open to the public, we were using our vault. Even though we were open to the public, no one was really coming in. So we were able to safely store the ballots in our vault, which is open to the public, and know that they were secure. We had grants that were from the state, from the federal government, from a private nonprofit group that assisted us. We received $45,000 to take, to use for the election, which was all needed in order to accomplish it. We also needed staff, so I was able to hire part-time staff to help with processing the applications. And for the first time ever, we were inundated with volunteers from our community. Many of our residents found themselves, either underemployed, unemployed, or working from home and had more free time and were willing to help us. All of those measures allowed us to be successful. In order for us to accomplish this in the future, I mean, at this upcoming election, it's a small election, we can handle it. But if you bring us to a state election where there is a governor's race that's heated, or another presidential election, it could be tough for us. So we do need to be certain that we have the resources in the future to be able to accomplish this, so that all votes are counted successfully.
So when I look at a town clerk, I think you have to be intelligent. You have to be detail oriented. You have to be a people person. But most importantly to me is the attitude I see in both of you, that you care, that you want this to work, that you work with other people, that you've networked, you know who to call. So I think that's very, very important. You have to have a little bit of everything, which isn't always easy. Some people are just, they're numbers people, or they're people, and you have to bring that all together. So
yeah, well, the town clerks are dedicated to getting this right, and we knew that in November 2020. And Anna Posniak and her leadership as the Connecticut Town Clerks Association president, we all knew what was at stake, and we did a phenomenal job. I'm very proud of what my fellow clerks did. I'm proud of what I did here in Windsor Locks. So we knew we had to get it right.
Yeah, I have to say, and I say this with a lot of caring, Anna, you're pretty feisty when you need to be. And you protected your town clerks. You did.
Absolutely. It's important to be resourceful. I knew we had a lot at stake, and I knew that I heard the cries from our residents. In my town, throughout the state of Connecticut and throughout the whole entire country that they were looking to be heard in this election. So it was very important for me to be able to get the resources so that my fellow town clerks could be successful. And one of the toughest things that I had to deal with is that I had to make sure the resources that I was requesting would assist someone who was in a small town like Kent, and then also the town clerk in Bridgeport. What those two size towns need is very different. If I asked for too much to make it perfect for Bridgeport, it would make it too difficult for Kent to function. So it was about finding that perfect medium that would assist both of them to be successful in the election.
Right. So this is a good question. So as we all know, the Secretary of State that position is coming up in a year. What qualities would you both look for in a Secretary of State? There's no reflection on anything, but I know what I'm looking for in my town clerk. The qualities I told you that I see that you both have, that is what I am looking for. And I know it's a tough question, but can you give me 3 attributes that you think that our next Secretary of State should have?
Yeah, so I would say, given the fact that the town clerks and the Secretary of State's office work so closely together, so, something I would look for is in a Secretary of State is, I want them to have an understanding of what we do, that we are essentially on the front lines, and a lot of what we do, has to do with the Secretary of State's office. So I think that communication between both the Connecticut Town Clerks Association and the town clerks, and the Secretary of State's office, that communication needs to be there. So somebody who's willing to, listen to the clerks, definitely I'd say that for sure.
Yeah, that sounds very, very important, especially when you're going through these, these stages. And I know we still have room for improvement. So how do we do that? And Anna?
I understand that, that the position is an elected position that represents a party, but I think it's important in the Secretary of the State, as it is in a town clerk, to kind of remain nonpartisan and to be able to listen to both sides carefully and understand what the issue is. You may get one side that really wants to move forward and make drastic changes, and then you have the other side that wants to put up all barriers and say we can't do anything, we're perfect as is. And I don't think either one of those is right for the state right now, and we need to be able to find what would be best for the majority of our residents to make them be able to be successful as voters. But the other thing that the Secretary of the State does is they handle the business division, so they handle all the corporations. So you really need someone who has a very good understanding on businesses and what they need, and understand the direction that the governor is trying to move in with the state to make business opportunities more prevalent in our state and make it easier for businesses to conduct business in our state. So the secretary needs to have a very good understanding about elections and businesses.
Right, that is all very, very important. And I do agree. And I see that in both of you, that you are both very nonpartisan. Yours is a higher position, Anna. And Scott, yours is an elected position, but as town clerk, all people, and it's me as state representative, once you're elected, all people are my constituents, not just one party, et cetera, and you help all people.
Right.
So
Well,
that
the clerk's office here in Windsor Locks is about people, not politics.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
I love that. About people, not politics. I may steal that from you.
Trademark it now.
Right.
Ella, it's been a pleasure talking to you both. And I do hope that those running for Secretary of State will go out and visit with a few of you, around this, a couple of you out there, and just get an idea. And I do think it's important, as with anything, that they listen to you, the town clerks, because you're their people, right? So we will hope with that in the next coming year. I want to thank you both for coming on to the porch. I started out on my front porch, but it's too noisy today, so then I come inside. But thank you for this casual conversation. I hope we've had people understanding better about what you do, and I know you both can be reached. Anna Posniak in Windsor and Scott Nolan in Windsor Locks. If you have any questions to our listeners, please feel free to reach out to them. I'm sure many know both of you already because it's a place that you just, tend to go. And as I said, I'll be in soon in Windsor to register my new puppy that you heard barking in the background as he was terrorizing my other older puppy. But anyways, thank you again. Any last comments that you would like to?
I would remind folks about the upcoming November 2nd election and just to get out and vote. And if you're looking for an absentee ballot, don't forget this year's a little different. So you have to make the request. You start off with that application. Applications can be found at myvote.ct.gov/absentee. And thank you so much for having me, State Representative Jane Garibay. And Anna, it's always good to see you.
I agree, Scott. Thank you very much. You did a great job, and thank you, Representative Garibay. And voters, just remember that you have to have your ballots back to us by 8 o'clock on Election Day, which this year is November 2nd. And you can use the drop box. We highly encourage you to use them, but you also can come into the town clerk's office and vote in person if you're comfortable with coming into the town hall. And all 7 of our polling locations in Windsor and in the 2 polling locations in Windsor Locks will be open, and we'll be utilizing measures to make sure that you're safe while you're voting. So remember to vote this year. It's an important year.
Every year is an important, and I hope we can build on what happened last year, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is that? My vote. What is that, Scott? My vote.
That's myvote.ct.gov/absentee.
Perfect. I know I needed that myself. So again, thank you very much for being on the show, and we'll talk to you both soon.